السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد الصادق الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته وتعلق بجانبه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, I'd like to welcome you all for this program concerning the life story a bit and a reflection on the poem of Muhammad Iqbal. And I want to begin by quoting what some of the early Muslims have mentioned from the early generations. It's ascribed to Imam Malik ibn Anas rahimahullah. It is said that Imam Malik said that saying La adri nisful ilm, that saying I do not know is half of all knowledge. And if that is a true statement, and it is a true statement, that means that concerning Muhammad Iqbal, I know half of the story. That is to say, I don't know that much about him myself. Because he is, of course, a poet who is writing in the Urdu language. And mujhe ziyada Urdu nahi aate. I don't know that much. And it is said by Ernest Hemingway that poetry is what gets lost in translation. I have come across in these past couple of days a couple of couplets from Muhammad Iqbal, and the couplets in English I'm sure don't do justice to the original because they sound like basic ordinary English to me in my ears. So I'm here also to learn. I have nothing to say about Muhammad Iqbal because I am also a learner, to learn from Dr. Asif. So I will introduce the doctor and we will hear his presentation inshallah, and I'll see if I have anything worth offering based on what I've learned and heard as well. Our guest tonight is Dr. Asif Hirani. Is it pronounced with a soft ha or hard ha? Ha, Hirani. Not Hirani. Okay. Or Harrani, yeah. So Dr. Asif Hirani's scholarly journey commenced at Dr. Israr Ahmed's Quran Academy and Jamia Abi Bakr. This is the one in Karachi, right? In 1996, I was 5 minutes walking away from that area. I was near Ashraf al-Madaris. Yeah. So, small world. He was there where he immersed himself in studying Arabic, tafsir, and hadith. This foundational education paved the way for advanced degrees, culminating in a master's in Usul al-Din and a PhD in Tafsir and Ulum al-Quran from Al-Madina International University. Dr. Hirani has published several important articles and books covering diverse topics within the textual and rational sciences. Dr. Asif currently serves as the resident scholar at ICNA Dallas and IANT, a lead instructor at, is this Amal or Amal? Amal Institute, and an adjunct faculty member at Boston Islamic Cemetery. So without further ado, فليتفضل مشكورا.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وعلى أما بعد. So before we can start, I'd like to say Jazakumullah khairan to Sheikh Abdul Aziz Suraqah for such a beautiful gathering, and I would like to even thank the board of Sexy Islamic Center, Sexy Muslim Society. How do you say? First of all, Sheikh, you have to make a Sharia compliant name of the city. Either because of if you're on SMS is better. Yeah, SMS is better. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you all reward for arranging this gathering, because Muhammad Iqbal is a very important figure for all of us. How much time I have, because when is Isha? 9:30? Because I have to cover his poem on Wataniyat, which have 4 stanzas. It's a very brief poem, but it still has 4 stanzas. So let me just quickly introduce you, Iqbal, and around 8:50, 8:55, we should basically go through his poem on Wataniyat. Around 9:15ish, 9:20ish, we should end with Q&A and everything. Okay, inshallah. So just as Sheikh mentioned, translating any poem into a different language, we have a significant challenge. Because Iqbal's true legacy lies in the emotional attachment which he creates when he uses his words in Persian and in Urdu. He says 12,000 lines almost in poetry. By the way, this is his entire work of his poetry, if you want to see. Out of 12,000, 5,000 lines are in Urdu and 7,000 lines are in Persian. He knew Arabic because he used to teach Arabic when his professor went into the vacation, when he was in England. He wrote one book in English. The rest of the work is in Persian and in Urdu. And this is the book Reconstruction of Islamic Thought in Islam. But we are trying to cover his poem or his poems in English language. So it's a translation of the poem, as Sheikh said. It will take away the emotional attachment, and all what we will do, we'll try to understand from a rational perspective. And in order to understand anything, you need to use both your muscle in terms of your intellectual muscle and your emotional muscle. So for understanding Iqbal in English, your emotional muscle won't be used. And that's a problem, because Iqbal without emotional attachment is not Iqbal. It's just a philosophical myth or political myth. So that's one big challenge we are facing. Second, one of the other big challenge we will have difficulty in understanding Iqbal in our time is that Iqbal is idolized by some people, especially after the formation of Pakistan, and demonized by some people. And both are problematic. Iqbal, just like other revivalists of the Ummah, whether it's Imam Ghazali or Ibn Taymiyyah, and in contemporary times you have so many revivalists and Muslihin, Iqbal is one of the great figures who gave a good message, alhamdulillah. We need to take that message and take it to the next level. But unfortunately, some people have idolized Iqbal, especially him becoming a national figure. And some people have demonized Iqbal, because once you have lovers, then automatically you will have haters as well. And that's one of the problems. So what we are going to see, we'll even see when we will see Iqbal's work, if you don't know Urdu and Persian, Farsi language, then mostly you are exposed to Iqbal in English language, and that is a different Iqbal reconstruction of Islamic thought. So you will see Iqbal's thought from more of a philosophical angle. If you know Urdu language and a good Urdu, then you are going to get an introduction to a different Iqbal, which talks about the revival of the Ummah. So it basically depends on what kind of Iqbal you are exposed to. When it comes to poetry, Iqbal was one of the top 3 poets in the 20th century, in my limited knowledge, in the entire 20th century of revivalists. From the revivalists' standpoint. Some people can put Ahmad Shawqi also, but Iqbal was one of the top 3. From the poetry angle, from revivalist standpoint. From philosophical standpoint, he was a good philosopher, but you cannot put him a top philosopher. He was a good philosopher, he's a PhD in philosophy, but you cannot put him next to Marx and Kant and all those people. But he was great. But when it comes to poetry and philosophy, we're going to give weight to his poetry more than his philosophy. This is a very important point to understand. And from theologian, obviously, there's no comparison with Imam Ghazali and Ibn Taymiyyah and Baqillani. There was no comparison. But Iqbal came with his thought, and may Allah give him reward for what he done in a good way, and may Allah forgive him for his shortcomings. Ameen Ya Rab. So let's understand quickly why we are discussing Iqbal here. Iqbal is very relevant for all of us for multiple reasons, but just few of them are. Iqbal was born at a time when India was colonized by Brits. And you will see two different extremes going on at that time in Muslim community in India. One extreme is which have the assimilationist mentality completely. Blending mentality. Whatever our Brits are saying, we need to go into their schools, learn their language, reform ourselves completely, forget about the tradition. That's how we're going to move with the world. That's assimilationist mentality. The other group in the Indian subcontinent, and I'm talking about religious responses to imperialism, okay? The other group, which was the other scholarly group, they were saying, no, we should have isolationist mentality. No assimilation, no blending, no integration, completely isolation. That's why in India, if you go back to those fatwa in late 19th, early 20th century, in India, Pakistan, that region, you might get fatwa of learning science is haram, learning English is haram. Why? It's because of they are fighting with the Brits. So that's one group from the Muslim scholarly perspective. They are saying we should have assimilationist mentality. Second is isolationist. If you see this, obviously the names have changed. Brits have been replaced by America. Muslim community here have similar responses, right? Post 9/11, some of the uncle and auntie, the best time is in the interfaith to identify where we are, on this camp or that camp. And Iqbal came at a time when Muslims were either this camp or that camp. And if you see the works of Iqbal, Iqbal said that neither we should completely have assimilationist mentality, because if you will assimilate, there will be no you. You lose your identity. And neither you should isolate yourself, because you are Imam, you have the message, you have the divine guidance. If you will isolate, who will give the message to them? Who will show them, reflect the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their society, social life? Rather, it should be positive integration. So Iqbal was the one who changed the perspective of the Muslims in Indo-Pak, in that region, how you will respond to the imperialist of that time. So this is something where we can definitely use Iqbal in our, when you see the Iqbal work, you will see confidence. And this is a time when, by the way, most of the people, when they were going to Britain as an imperial hub from Indo-Pak, Iqbal went to India, Europe in around 1902. Actually, 1905 to 1908. Yeah, that's the time. 1905 to 1908. That was a time when anyone was going from Muslim land to the imperial hub of Brit. They were just mesmerized with the culture, and they were trying to change. Let's reform the tradition. Let's change the tradition. Western modernization. Iqbal was the one who actually gave a constructive criticism on the Western civilization, so that the awestruck feeling, the mar'ubiyya, awestruck feeling which we have in our heart from the West and civilization, that can be removed. No one before Iqbal in that region did that, in that region. So in that case, Iqbal was a trendsetter, not the trend follower. And that's why he's important. Because if you want to have confidence, if you want to raise kids like confident kids, you have to study Iqbal. And obviously, there are parents sitting in front of me, so we should know that. How many of you understand Urdu? I'm trying to skip Urdu language just of the respect of the Sheikh. Should I just keep saying Iqbal words also? Or Sheikh, what do you think? Okay. So inshallah, I will going to translate also. Iqbal himself said, Iqbal did not come in vacuum. Obviously, Iqbal said, Chahate hain ke sab ho Surayya pe muqim. Surayya means star. Chahate hain ke sab ho Surayya pe muqim. Pehle koi aisa paida to karo qalb salim. He says, everyone wants to be the superstar, but no one wants to work on the heart, the sound heart. So Iqbal came from a family where the mother and a father had a huge impact on the raising of Iqbal. His father was reported to work in a financial institution under Brits, and he used to deal in interest. He was a Sufi inclined father. But his mom, when Iqbal was about to born, his mom said that I have to feed Iqbal with completely halal money. So she sold her jewelry, whatever her mom gave it to her for marriage, and she got the halal income, and she would buy a goat, and she would take the milk and give that to Iqbal, so that even the food which Iqbal is getting, the milk which Iqbal is getting, is completely halal. And then his father realized, his father repented and left the job. This is the sacrifice. We all want our kids to become superstar, and mashallah, are you doing that sacrifices? Similarly, his father used to really work hard on Iqbal Tarbiyah. When he became 7-year-old, Iqbal used to, one day he was asking Iqbal, that Iqbal, what are you reading? By the way, after Salatul Fajr, Iqbal used to recite Quran when he was 7-year-old. So his father used to ask him that, Iqbal, what are you reciting? He said, I'm reciting Quran. And he would not say anything, he would leave. Slowly, after some time, this practice repeated. One day, Iqbal's curiosity increased, and Iqbal said, Dad, you are asking me every single day what I'm reciting. I said, I recite Quran, but you don't tell me what further. He says, I want you to remember this. When you are reciting the Quran, think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have revealed Quran on your heart. Recite Quran in that way. That Quran is talking to you. Iqbal said on that day, when my relationship with the Quran changed completely. And Iqbal actually said this in his poetry also, that neither Razi nor Sahib Kashaf, those technical tafasir, none can benefit you until you will realize that words of Allah are talking to me. Why I'm saying you this? As a parents, are we making an effort to talk to our kids from the day one that Islam is relevant for you? You have to engage yourself in the tradition in a proper way. This is just the concern, genuine concern which parents had that produced it people like Iqbal. Okay. So I don't want to waste the entire time in the introduction to Iqbal, what made Iqbal. But just quickly, Iqbal, initial education in 1877, he was born. His initial education was in English, in philosophy, in economics, his bachelor's and master's. Then he came for PhD to Europe, where he completed another bachelor from England, and then he went to PhD, Germany for PhD in philosophy. So basically he was deep inside philosophy, political science, economics. He studied law also after that. So he was very knowledgeable. If you see this only English book he wrote in 1920s, by the way, this was the speeches and then it came as a book. Uqsimu billah, you will be surprised that how can a person who was born in India, this is in 1920s, this is very difficult English, very difficult. So this shows the caliber of Iqbal, that how quick he was in terms of his contemporariness. He was very well aware of what's going on. But the real Iqbal, before coming to Europe, while he was completing his bachelor's and master's, he was introduced to Islamic sciences, but he was not a Allama Iqbal or Muhammad Iqbal we know. When he came to the Europe, this is where he have a completely change of heart, you can say, that he himself said, and I will quote him, he says, Azab danish hazir se ba khabar hu main. Azab danish hazir se ba khabar hu main कि मैं इस आग में डाला गया हूँ मिस्ल खलील. He says Ibrahim alayhi salam went into the fire and come out without having any burns. He says, I went into the Europe and ideologically it was like fire. It could dilute me within it. But alhamdulillah, I came out safe. Because most of the people, when they go deep into the philosophical side of the Western civilization, they are diluted and absorbed completely. And he used to say so many things, but I don't have time. He used to practice, he gave bar exam and he used to practice law in London. He used to teach in European universities. But in 1908, he decided, I have to go back. This decision of him going back, basically from 1908 until his death, this will going to define what Allama Iqbal's legacy is in terms of reviving the Ummah. Before that, he was kind of a nationalist figure. He wanted to revive Indian Islam kind of a thing, but now he wants to work on the revival of the Ummah. That Ummah is sleeping, we need to wake. So this is where we are going to discuss most of his poems, which are basically heart-touching, Shikwa, Jawab-e-Shikwa, Tulu Islam. All these poems actually come after he come back from the Europe. Even though his poems were before also, which were very good, but now you will see all of a sudden different spirit in Iqbal. Okay. By the way, just want to tell you, he passed away in 1938, his vision. In 1936, Sheikh Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi, one of my favorite scholar, Sheikh Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi, he visited with few scholars and he wrote an entire book on Iqbal, Rawa' al-Iqbal. He visited Iqbal and he said, Iqbal said that one of the regrets he have, that he suggested to the big government people in India and others that have your own system, do not rely on the Western banking system. Have your own financial institution, because otherwise he would say that this banking system is like an octopus. He will going to come and grab you completely. Don't rely on the Western banking system. Look at the vision. Now when you see the IMF and all these loans which are given as a zakat and then they will squeeze completely, you will see that. He would say, have your own press. Don't rely on the Western news. This is all in 1936, by the way. Look at the vision of Iqbal. In 1931, I'll just say a few things about Iqbal to show you how genius he was. In 1931, you know what's going on in Palestine right now, right? Before, we have United Nations right now. Before, when United Nations were formed, any idea? After First World War or Second World War? Second. After First World War, there was something else. League of Nations. United Nations headquarters is in? Come on, Americans. No, not League of Nations. United Nations is? Yeah, mashallah. Yeah, right? League of Nations was in Geneva. In 1930, so lot of Jews are migrating to Palestine after Balfour Declaration. Lot of. And there is an anxiety that what's happening, there's something about to happen. So in 1931, Chief Mufti of Palestine, Amin Husseini, he invited Iqbal that come, because you have studied in Europe, law, everything, mashallah, you studied political science. Iqbal was a very famous figure back in the days. So tell us how to make our case to the League of Nations. Maybe they will listen and they will going to do something because we are afraid something about to happen. In 1931, when Israel was formed, 48. Iqbal said, तेरी दवा ना जिनेवा में है ना लंदन में है तेरी दवा ना जिनेवा में है ना लंदन में है फरंग की रगें जा पंजाए यहूद में है. He said, neither you are going to get the solution from Geneva or from London. London back in the days like a New York, okay? He would say that this League of Nations is like an old prostitute, old mistress. Why old? Because no one uses them. Because entire Western civilization is under the palm of the Zionists. By the way, he used to differentiate between the Zionists and the normal Jew who might not follow that ideology, but that's a different thing. Okay, this is Iqbal in 1931. And look at now 100 years later where we are, almost 100 years. Okay, now, there are a few other things about Iqbal I wanted to share, but I don't think so that we will have time for that. So let's quickly go on to his poem. Even though I had in my notes the things which made Iqbal Iqbal, that's in front of me right now. What Iqbal message is for the education system. Iqbal, they don't believe in this. Enroll your kids into the Islamic school and they will learn secular education and then they will learn Quran. Iqbal had a different mindset altogether. But I don't have time, I guess. So we have to skip all that. What do you think? We can go to the poem of Iqbal, what we are discussing, Wataniyat. Okay? Education. So Iqbal, inshallah, one day we can discuss his entire educational philosophy. By the way, he was called as Rumi Athani because his entire mindset is that entire West is struggling with materialism, capitalism. All you need is the words of Rumi. He was considered as Rumi Athani. That's why people in different parts of Turkey, and they also respect Iqbal's work so much. So for education, I'm trying to see what I can tell you. There are so many things in education. Okay, first, we now know that modern education system, by the way, if you want to read the book before you get the appreciation of Iqbal, is by Wael Hallaq, Restating Orientalism. A good book if he is doing critique of the modern education system. Iqbal himself was obviously PhD from Europe, so he was well educated. You know, one of the other poets of famous poet in Urdu is Akbar. Akbar used to say, यूं कत्ल के बच्चों से वो बदनाम ना होता, यूं कत्ल के बच्चों से वो बदनाम ना होता, अफसोस के फिरौन को कॉलेज की ना सूझी. He said, Firaun was an idiot. He killed babies to enslave a nation, to make them slaves. He would have just made a modern college, modern education system, the next generation would have become their slaves. The entire colonialism, now you are going to find people in that land colonized land who are supporting Firaun 2.0. This is what modern education system does. So Iqbal used to say this, and this is difficult to translate. I hope I have the translation. Yes, I have the translation. Iqbal used to say, "Ta'aleem ke tezab mein dal iski khudi ko." When khudi means you have recognized Allah, there's a soul. Soul have recognized Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone have that soul which have recognized Allah. He says, "Ta'aleem ke tezab mein dal iski khudi ko ho jaye mulaim to jidhar chaye ise pher de." He said, modern education system is like an acid. No matter how practicing Muslims you are, if you are not well versed about where the challenge will come, if you will go, it will going to confuse you. Like an acid will going to melt you will going to become a dough. Mulaim. You'll become a dough. And once you become a dough, the modern education system, because it's creating intellectual machine for the state can move you around however they like. That's the Iqbal. And Iqbal used to say, before we can even teach this, to understand how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been removed from social sciences. Especially social sciences. Natural science, he paid attention, but especially social sciences. He would say you cannot teach social sciences without reinventing from our perspective. He would say, let's go back. We had the sciences, we had the tradition, but bring back Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His tafsir of Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq is incredible in his poetry, that he would say, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi. That read everything but with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't remove the name of Allah, otherwise you will be Changes 2.0, according to him, if you were going to do this. He would criticize the Western democracy system. He would say, क्या देखा नहीं तूने मगरिब का जमहूरी निज़ाम चेहरा रोशन अंदरून चंगेज से तारीख तर. Haven't you seen the enlightened face of the politicians in the West? Their enlightened face are hiding the Changes 2.0 inside. And we know 125 years last, what have happened in the world. More than 110 million people passed away, according to William Kavanagh, on nationalistic wars. First by Brits and now by our superpower. Okay? Okay, let's start inshallah now the poem which we are about to cover here, Wataniyat. Before this poem, you need to understand Iqbal criticizes two angles. Iqbal criticizes the angle of, okay, how many of you agree with this? Because Muhammad Iqbal was a good person, yes or no? This is historical interpretation. For some, it's bad person. But Muhammad Iqbal existed. This is a historical fact. Remember, historical fact is always different than historical interpretation. Is that clear? Salahuddin Ayyubi was a good person. Yes, but some people might say he's a bad person. But he existed. This is a historical fact. Whether he's a good or bad, it's a historical interpretation. Okay? Okay, now. One view of history, European history, is that church Christendom was handling, and it's because of their abuse, power abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, that the people realize in Europe that we need to control the Christianity and the Christendom. We need to reduce the role of the Bible, reduce it into the church, so that estates came, and now we are living in a peaceful life. Because there was so much violence on the religious war, so many million people passed away in 16th century. That's one version of the history. Have you heard that before? Okay, that is a version which is predominant version. You can say it's a version of Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and so forth. Iqbal doesn't necessarily agree with that notion. Okay? Iqbal said, and before I can start this is an important point. Iqbal said, it is because of the nation state those religious wars happen. Nation state took the power from the churches and put church into the category of modern category of religion. Are you getting it? And now everything which is good will be secular. Everything which is bad is religion. In terms of most of the things. So violence done on the name of religion, bad. Same thing, same act, same violence done on the name of secular, good. You will be a national hero. J word, bad because it's religion. Same act done by the state, it's good. You will get Gold Star Award for the same act. So who is going to decide what is good and bad? Nation state. If it's religion category is mythical, supernatural, irrational. Secular category, I'm just telling you how it works in the Western civilization. Secular category is natural, logical, rational. And sometimes you have to use your force to make the religious category think in a rational way. Because you're doing a good to them to save their next generation, to humanize them. Are you getting it? It looks very similar, right? By the way, for more detail, if you want to understand it in easy language before we can start this is I would say, best book on this topic, Myth of Religious Violence by William Kavanagh. We did the book club with my students. Because there are other books by Talal Asad and Wael Halak, but they are very heavy writers. This is easy writer. So I would highly recommend this book. Okay, now let's start. I'm going to go through the poem. Do you want me to read this first in Urdu completely or Urdu and English translation both? I'll read 2 lines in Urdu and 2 lines in English, okay? Okay, Iqbal said, one more thing about this poem. You cannot understand. Every Sufi lingo have the language where you have to understand their syllogisms, you have to understand their metaphor. So Iqbal, whenever he would use idols, he would actually ask you that you have to be the Ibrahim of this time who have to destroy the idols. Like Iqbal used to say, Kun misla Ibrahim fil imani kay tuzila ma'abid al-awsani. Iqbal used to say, you have to be like Ibrahim alayhi salam of your time who are destroying the idols of your time. We all will going to remember Eid al-Adha, where we remember the sacrifice of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Make sure you don't forget the other sunnah of Ibrahim alayhi salam to challenge the idols of your time. Okay? Now coming back. Now remember. Okay, now Iqbal said, Is daur mein main aur hai, jam aur hai, jam aur. Saqi ne bina ki ravish lutf o sitam aur. He said, in this age, it's a start. This is first stanza is about introduction, what he's about to say. He says, in this age, in this time, the wine is different. Wine is different. The cup is different. And the place where people are drinking wine is different. By the way, wine is a thing which creates activism. Because wine creates intoxication, activism, right? So he says, Is daur mein main aur hai, jam aur hai, jam aur. In this age, wine is different, cup is different, and the place where people drink is altogether different. Saqi ne bina ki ravish lutf o sitam aur. The cup bearer who's serving now have a new way, sometime kind and sometime cruel. So basically, the people of authority, the meaning of this, the people of authority, the people of power who have the power today, because now it's a nation state, not the religion, not the Christendom, not the Islam, it's a nation state. They have changed everything according to their own benefit. He's introducing nation state have the power, and church and religion and Islam and all those things have went into the category of religion. Is that clear? They will try to revise and reform everything based on the benefit of the nation state. This is the introduction. Don't lost in the metaphor. Where is the wine and why he's talking about the wine? Don't go do that with the poetry. You will kill it. Then he says, Muslim ne bhi ta'mir kiya apna haram aur. Tehzeeb ke azar ne tarashwaye sanam aur. Azar means father of Ibrahim, right? The one who created, manufacturer of the idol. Muslim ne bhi ta'mir kiya apna haram aur. He says, even Muslim has built a new sanctuary, new haram for him. This can mean 2 things. One, our direction was Kaaba. Haram was Kaaba. For ever since nation state is struck, our Kaaba, our direction have become first Brits and now. Okay, you know this. I cannot say some things in masjid, especially these days. We are saying so many things, Shaykhana. One other thing it could mean that Muslim ne bhi ta'mir kiya apna haram, or even Muslims have built the new version of this haram. That first nation state building started in Europe and then it impacted. When Iqbal is saying it did not happen around that time, but slowly and gradually it will happen. Slow Islamic states will come. that was divide and rule simply. Okay? So Muslim is also buying in for this new idol instead of breaking this idol. Are you getting it? Tehzeeb ke Azar ne tarashwa sanam, or just like Azar used to manufacture idol and Ibrahim came to destroy those idols. This is the idol. Nation state is the idol of this modern civilization. This is a new idol. You need to recognize this. Then he said the most powerful punchline of this entire poem. First stanza is about to over after this. He says, "In taza khudaon mein bada sabse watan hai, jo perhan uska hai wo mazhab ka kafan hai." He said, among these new gods, among these new deities, among these new idols, among these freshest of idols, the freshest, the newest idol and the biggest idol is the idol of nation state. Nation state. Awsan. And the dress which covers, this is very powerful by the way, the dress, perhan, the dress which covers the nation state, the dress which covers the nation state is the shroud of the religion. Because you have taken the power from the religion and given to the nation state. Oh, sorry, taken the power of the church and given to the nation state. And Christendom is reduced to the category of religion. Jesus, don't come out of the category of religion. We will invite you for our interfaith prayers, and then we'll do whatever we have to. Maybe we'll ask you to bless our war, which we are actually about to have a crusade impulse, but we'll ask you to just make prayers for us. That's it. That's the role. This is so powerful. So now, when he says the dress of this nation state will be the shroud of religion, you know what does it mean? Now, your sacrifices will be for nation state, not for the religion, because it's a new category. Now your loyalty will be for nation state, not for the... Okay. Now your identity will be... Who are you? I'm American. Yes, but before that, you are Muslim. Whether you're Muslim, Christian, atheist, but you're American. That entire mindset have come. And there's a by the way, you have to read this book if you want to understand this, what I'm saying. But I don't have time because it's already 9, so I have to just finish it up. We have finished first stanza, alhamdulillah. Don't say takbir, 3 more stanzas remaining. I will be very quick. Now, second stanza is coming. This stanza is that religion and state cannot coexist together. He says, "Ye but ke tarashida-e tehzeeb-e nawi hai, garat kare kashana-e deen-e nabawi hai." He says, this idol, which idol he's talking about? Nation state. This idol is shaped. This idol, this modern idol is carved by this modern civilization. It destroys the... You know, Kashana is not only home, it's a place where you take residence. It destroys the home of the religion of the Prophet. So when they were going to apply this nation state in the Muslim community, it was going to divide you all completely into... By the way, he's saying just before 30, 40 years before it happened. Then he says, okay, who are you? You are Americans, right? If I will ask a Pakistani, I was giving this talk in Lahore, before I can tell you what next. And I asked them, who are you? They all said, we are Pakistani. I said, no. And I am not American, even though I have a blue passport, which you all are craving for. I said, let me tell you what Iqbal said. And when I actually quoted this, what's coming, Iqbal was just 10 kilometers, because Iqbal's grave is 10 kilometers from that place where I was in Lahore. He says next, Bazu tera tawheed ki, Bazu tera tawheed ki, quwwat se qawi hai, Islam tera des hai, tu mustafawi hai. You know what he said? He says, our identity is what? He says, our arm, bazu, our arm is stronger with the concept of Tawheed. Islam is our country and Mustafawi is our identity. You know, this is so powerful, so powerful. Even for the marriage reasons, we actually divide ourselves. It should be American, right? The spouse should be American. And I'm not saying good or bad, I'm not saying that. But this entire mindset of changing the perspective from religion to the nation state, everything, the religious reformation have to do a lot with the nation state, by the way. We think it's a religious movement. Yes, it is. Christianity provides a lot of chances after abuses. But even every small state in the Europe, they want to reform Christianity. And this is what, subhanAllah, Iqbal is saying, Bazu tera tawheed ki quwwat se qawi hai, Islam tera desh hai, tu mustafawi hai. Then he says, now this is something which I just want to explain to you, just I will read the translation. Nazara derina zamane ko dikha de. Nazara derina zamane ko dikha de. E mustafawi khak mein is but ko mila de. He said, show the old beautiful sight. By the way, Nazara derina is show your golden ages. You were, by the way, before 150 years, all the superpowers of the world used to come from Middle East. Do you know this? Before Brits. Almost all the superpower. Obviously, last 150 years, the dynamics have changed. Iqbal is saying, show the golden ages, beautiful sight of your civilization to the world once again. O follower of Mustafa, destroy the idol of nation state to the dust. I'm not explaining this. This is the words of Iqbal, okay? Now, third stanza. What you need to do. Iqbal said, by the way, this is so powerful, so powerful. Ho qaid maqami to natija hai tabahi. Ho qaid maqami to natija hai tabahi. Re behr mein azad watan surat mahi. He says, being tied to a specific land without feeling that I should migrate is a destruction. Live like a fish in the ocean, who free of any limitations. If Rasulullah did not migrate from Mecca to Medina, if Yusuf alayhi salam did not migrate from Canaan to Egypt, you see all these prophets are migrating. This is sunnah of prophets, right? So he says, if you restrict yourself at one place, you cannot find your full potential. If you have two options, either change yourself by migrating, and if you said there is no point of migrating, then you will try to change religion based on the requirements of nation state. You have two options. Rasulullah loved Makkah more than us loving New York and Toronto, right? Okay. है तर्क वतन सुन्नत महबूब इलाही है तर्क वतन सुन्नत महबूब इलाही दे तू भी नबूवत की सदाकत पे गवाही. He says, leaving one's homeland is the sunnah of beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You too, O Mustafawi, should bear witness to the truth of Prophet, if you are a real follower. गुफ्तार सियासत में वतन और ही कुछ है, इरशाद नबूवत में वतन और ही कुछ है. He says, in the political science, the watan is completely different than in terms of the speeches of Prophet. The concept of watan is something else. When Prophet used to say, by the way, Prophet did not use the word watan. The hadith which is recommended, Iqbal also have this tendency. Iqbal was not a hadith scholar, remember this. So that hadith is not sahih, not even the hasan. That hadith where the hadith says hubbul watan min al-iman. That hadith is not from authentic narration, but Rasulullah used the word balad for that context. Now, when Rasulullah is using these balad and these concepts, it's very different than the modern nation state, because it's an entire philosophical concept. So Iqbal is saying, do not get mixed when you are reading the hadith and the modern nation. Do not apply this. Modern nation state is it's an ideological concept. Then the last thing, and I will end with this inshallah, fourth stanza. He says, the harms of nation state. He says, aqwam jahan mein hai raqabat to isi se. Nations of the world fight tooth and nail because of the nationalism. Do you know how many people lost their lives in the First World War, which was basically nationalism? How many? 38 million according to William Kavanagh. How many? 38 million. How many people have lost their lives for non-religious wars in last 125 years? I told you, 70 to 110 million people. We are just seeing live stream because of technology. Wars have happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, but it was on live stream. He says, "Aqwam jahan mein hai raqabat," to isi se nations of the world fight with each other because of this nation state. Taskhir hai maqsood tijarat, to isi se. The aim is to conquer the business through nationalism. Who will be the powerful? Who will be the biggest person who will flex the muscle in the map? Khali, by the way, you know, one of the political scientists, not John Mershmeyer, Jeffrey Sachs, he's very popular nowadays after European Union speech. He said, the only problem which America have with China, Jeffrey Sachs, as wide as you can, I'm just quoting him, the only problem which America have with China is because China is economically becoming independent. Taskhir maqsood tijarat to isi se. Conquering others through business and trade also happens because of nation state. Then he says, khali hai sadaqat se siyasat to isi se. Politics have become empty from truth because of nation state. You will lie, you will be honest just because of what is beneficial for my nation state, my country. Kamzor ka ghar hota hai garat to isi se. Rich is getting richer and people are exploiting the poor, squeezing the poor. For this reason. Aqwam mein makhlook khuda badti hai isi se. Qawmiyat Islam ki jar katti hai isi se. This is end, by the way. He says, this will going to never bring people back to the uniformity. And for us, we have the concept, ummah concept. But this is so powerful, so powerful. Whether for marriage, support for the sports teams, all these things. We are not against the concept which goes in line with the Sharia, by the way. But we are saying that some of these concepts ideologically goes against the Sharia. And then obviously we have to pick the side of and the camp of Allah and His Messenger. This is what the brief message of Iqbal and Wataniya. Now let's conclude this. Sheikhana, if you want to add something, inshallah, please.
Jazakumullahu anna khayran. I have nothing to add myself except a brief reflection from which comes a question that I want to pose to the Sheikh. The author Hassan Guy Eaton, rahimahullah, who was a well-known British author and thinker, in his work written in the 1980s, King of the Castle, it was a reflection on the nature of modernity and the modern world and how it has essentially trapped people. And in one of the chapters, he was talking about how the modern world has essentially, through all the different nation states, created very elaborate prisons where each nation state can, as it were, be seen as a kind of prison, where each of these nation states imprisons its citizens with three pieces of paper. 3 pieces of paper. Paper number 1, the passport. Paper number 2, paper money. And paper number 3, what do you think the third paper is? Degrees from higher institutions of learning. He says, through these 3 pieces of paper, modern man has been imprisoned. Because if you don't have one paper, the paper, certificate, degree, it makes it harder to get the second paper, which is the money. And if whether you have the third paper, the passport, or not, you are still trapped by the nation for which that passport represents. So one of the reflections I had in hearing the poem is that through the nation state, we have, in all of these different nations, been essentially put into a kind of prison state where we're made to enjoy the prison. And, there's lots of talk about hijrah. I remember as a relatively new Muslim in the 1990s, that was the talk of the day, among converts especially. We should make hijrah. And many people attempted that. Many people attempted that. And I must say, of the people I know who attempted that, 99.9% of them ended up coming back. Sometimes it's because life was quite tough and they couldn't really hack it. But for most of them, it was because even if they found work in the country to which they migrated, there was always this one problem that they could never escape. And that problem is no matter how long they stay in that place to which they make hijrah, they're never seen as a person of that place. Their stay in that place is always very tenuous and temporary. So even if they stay 20, 30 years, it's always a temporary iqama. And that iqama can be lifted. Just the other day, Kuwait suspended the citizenship of 17,000 people who had been there, for many of them, their whole life, because their parents were there working, and they grew up there, and because of the politics, they just lifted the citizenship. That's all they know, and now they have nowhere to go. So even the idea of hijrah, of not being bound to the watan, as he put in the poem, the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the hijrah from the most beloved land to him, Mecca al-Mukarramah, to Medina, this has become increasingly difficult. And those who do make the hijrah or attempt to do so, they are always seen as someone temporary in whatever place they migrate to. So I guess the question that comes from that is, if we are imprisoned and bound by these three papers, primarily the first one, the passport, how does one transcend the wataniyah given the imposed controls?
The questioner knows more than the one who's questioned, right? So I'll give my thoughts, what Iqbal said about this, and then inshallah I'll let you answer, Shaykhana, also. Iqbal said in Jawab Shikwa, he says, "Ehdino barq hai, aatish zan har khirman hai. Ehdino barq hai, aatish zan har khirman hai. Iman isse na koi sehra, na koi gulshan hai. इस नई आग का अक़वाम कोहने ईंधन है, मिल्लत ख़त्म रसूल शोरा व पैराहन है. आज भी हो जो इब्राहीम का ईमा पैदा, आग कर सकती है अंदाज़े गुलिस्तां पैदा." He said, modernity is like a lightning. It's coming from the west, but it will going to spread like a wildfire, and entire globe will going to feel that burn from the modernity. And if Ummah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ won't do anything, then eventually they will going to come under the trap of this modernity like a fire, because it's spreading like a wildfire. What's the solution? Solution is, again, I told you this, Iqbal doesn't believe in isolationists, Iqbal doesn't believe in assimilationists. So Iqbal's solution he's proposing is, he says, but even today, if Ibrahim's faith can be brought back, even today, if Ibrahim's faith can be brought back in the modern times, then again, fire of modernity can become a garden. Why? Ibrahim was put in the fire, and fire didn't change. So instead of you isolating, try to reform the characteristics of the fire of modernity by having the Iman of Ibrahim Islam. You have to give benefit of doubt to Iqbal, because in poetry, he have to use these metaphors. In English, you might say, okay, what's he talking about? But in Urdu, it straight goes into your heart. So basically, he is suggesting here, isolationist might not be the right way, but at the same time, assimilationist might not be the way. Try to practice your faith and have a positive integration mindset. And inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will going to help us, inshallah, as an ummah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sheikh, if you have any observations, inshallah.
I have nothing to add. So we have, how much time do we have? We don't have a lot of time. So this would now be a good opportunity for questions or reflections or comments from all of you, inshallah. If you want to ask a question, feel free. Well, maybe we can have someone pass the mic.
There's a question.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. I'm from India. I was born and raised in India. Then I came here. One thing what in today's age Muslims are facing, after partition, our shuyukh said, we are Muslim first, then we are Indians. So right now, for good or bad, Muslims are trying to change their course. They are telling, we are Indian first. So that's all I have to comment.
I think that question requires a much deeper reflection. I think the answer to that question will also depend on who's answering it. I definitely have my own thoughts as not only a convert who was born here, but whose ancestors came among the earliest settlers going back to the 1600s, about the idea of identity and what does it mean to be an American. Is an American anything? You know, is it nothing? I think that's a deeper question, but it's not as deep a question for your children, right? As a person who has immigrated here, maybe you don't see yourself as an American in your identity, and that makes sense. But the question is, what is your children's identity? I once asked a group of young men, how many of them, and they were born here, I asked them, how many of you see yourselves as American? And I think maybe only one person raised their hand, which I found very strange. And I also had that experience living in Europe, and the European Muslim experience is very, very different than the American Muslim experience. And very few, if any, of the Muslims that were living in Europe actually felt like it was home. That's quite different from us. A Muslim may immigrate here, and at some point they feel this is home, for better or for worse, this is home. Unlike in Europe, where the majority of the Muslims living in Europe that I talked to, always in the back of their mind, they had this idea that eventually I'm going to go back. Eventually I'm going to go back. This is not really home. I'm here temporarily. And the reality is we're all here temporarily. Mentioning the hadith, which is not really a hadith, حُبُّ الْوَطَنْ مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ. Some of the imams, they cite this hadith, which is not really a hadith as he mentioned, but they still cite it. And they say that it can be given a proper interpretation, a sound meaning. Love of one's homeland is from Iman. What is our true watan? Who knows the answer? Where did Adam come from? Jannah. Jannah is our true watan. So love of Jannah, yearning for Jannah, where you have the ridwan of Allah Ta'ala, and in the divine presence, the yearning for that and the love for that, that is from Iman. That's the true watan. Imam Abdullah bin Alawi al-Haddad rahimahullah in Sabil al-Iddikar, his book on the stages of human experience, he says that there's 5 stages and we're in stage number 2. Stage 1 is on the day of Yawmu Alastu bi Rabbikum. Am I not your Lord? The day of the ahad, the mithaq, where every human being testified, where Allah asked them, where they heard the divine discourse, am I not your Lord? And every soul testified. قَالُوا بَلَا شَهِدْنَا, we bear witness. That's the first stage of our experience. The second stage is where we are right now, dunya. And the dunya, what do the Arabs say? Ad-dunya faniya. The dunya, the lower world is fading, it's ephemeral. It's not our true watan. Then comes the third stage, which is the barzakh after we die. Then comes the fourth stage, which is qiyamah. Then comes the fifth stage, which is insha'Allah the watan of eternity, Jannah, for the believers. May Allah make us among them. Ameen. So there's no simple answer to that, but I would advise myself and you and anyone else that although we may wrestle with these identities are temporal. They are all temporal, meaning they are only in this dunya, right? When you're in the hereafter, there's not going to be like a Pakistani section in Jannah and then like the Bengali side over there, the Nigerians over here and the Americans over there. There are Americans in Jannah, inshallah, as there are Muslims in America. But there is Jannah. What is your identity in Jannah? Your identity in Jannah, and I think he alludes to it here in the poem. You are in Jannah Muhammadi, because you belong to the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that is the ultimate watan. May Allah bring us to that watan لسلامة وخير ولطف وعافية. آمين.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My question relates to nationalism versus secularism. I know chronologically, some people would argue that nationalism came before secularism. Would you say one is a bigger evil, or are they now kind of intertwined and have their own identity, which depends on the other?
After 4 or 5 years of going through different books, the problem is that the problem in the modernity was the problem of identity, but the problem of the post-modernity is the problem of definitions. How do you define this? How do you define that? Everything is subjective according to postmodernists, right? How do you define what secularism is? How do you define what nationalism is? How do you define what this ism or that ism is? I spoke with several political scientists, including the people who are working very close to Dr. Wael Hallaq, because I was inclined towards that. I just wanted to confirm. And he says, in a simple language, nationalism, secularism is the same thing. Okay. So don't overcomplicate, because every book have their own, but this is basically some summary of the entire discussion. Yeah.
Brother, I have one. Assalamu alaikum. I just want to refer the poem, the first stanza, the second verse, I think. The one is that Saki ne bina ki rash lutfo sitam aur. That's the Saki, the word is for like bartender, we all know that. But in Iqbal time, when he was mentioning the Saki as a British, okay? But now the Saki is different, So each era, or whatever, maybe next there will be somebody, anybody else, So if we recognize our Saki, then what should be our duty, And also the Sheikh also mentioned about that we are a prison of 3 papers, So after doing this and recognizing the Saki, what should we do? I mean, we just live idle, or just say, okay, Allah Kareem, Allah will do it, So what should be our duties,
Talk to me, inshallah, after this, because it doesn't require 30 seconds. I won't do justice by answering this. But again, I started with this. If you recognize the modern day biggest challenge, then don't assimilate and change the religion because of the modern day Saki requirements. Don't isolate yourself and leave and then complain that look at what's happening in the world. Positive integration. Don't lose yourself. If 7th generation American comes, Shekhana, let's say, if 7th generation American Muslim men can become imam, if 8th generation Muslim women can wear hijab confidently, not because of the force, confidently, then I think, alhamdulillah, we have positively integrated in the society. You're not changing Islam because, okay, if state is asking us, LGBTQ will be okay, completely halal. That's what we have to do. Neither assimilationist nor isolationist. I said in the beginning, positive integration, inshallah. That's a brief answer, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you, Dr. Asif Hirani, for your presentation. May Allah reward you. Inshallah, we will call the adhan and pray Salat al-Isha.